So throughout our hurricane coverage, we've been telling you about what goes on as the hurricane passes through. But what happens when it passes and the cleanup begins? Well, our next guest knows exactly what goes on into the rebuilding effort of any area damaged by a hurricane. Thomas Panuzio is a former FEMA official, and he joins us now from Salt Lake City, Utah. Thomas, thanks for joining us. And
it's a pleasure to be here again, Kelly.
Oh, thanks for, and we want to get right to it. What do we have to do for areas when they've undergone a tremendous amount of damage from storm surge, power outages, downed trees, and just the impact of a hurricane itself?
Well, the first thing, as you know, is each storm is different. This storm, particularly Hurricane Nate, is different than Harvey and Irma, and as well as Maria. But normally in a very dangerous major Cat 3, 4, or 5 hurricane, there's immediate damage assessment and urban search and rescue teams are deployed. I don't believe that'll be the case here. I think they'll go directly to what I call Phase 3, which is essentially identifying damage, making sure everybody in the surrounding areas are okay, and making sure that the power grid, the water grid, everything is up and running, especially in New Orleans that's, so prone to flooding.
Sure. Well, and as we've seen through our reporters on the ground there in New Orleans, it appears that New Orleans has escaped the worst of this Category 1 storm. The storm is a fast-moving storm, which means it will not linger over these areas, as we saw in Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Harvey, as well as Hurricane Maria, which all but devastated Puerto Rico. And we know that the devastation there is still lingering, and it's hard to clean up those areas, albeit it's being done. So when you look at this storm and the Category 1 aspects of it, it will be, it seems, easier to clean up.
Much easier to clean up. The logistics of a storm moving very quickly through an affected area allows for FEMA and the federal government to push assets that are appropriate into the affected areas and allows the recovery to begin. What we saw in Harvey is completely the opposite of what we're seeing in Nate, and that is essentially that the storm basically stuck around so long and continued to rain and continue to affect people that it was very difficult getting assets in. What we saw in Maria and Irma was areas affected that could not push assets down because of their topography and their geographical nature.
Right, because if you look at Hurricane Irma hitting Florida, many of the assets that you needed to go in to help restore power, they had to stay in Jacksonville, near the Daytona area, in order before going down towards those areas that were hardest hit. But then they got surprised too when Irma decided to hit the Jacksonville area. But nevertheless, we're still saying that a cleanup has to take place. And how exhausting is that, particularly the fact that people are storm ravaged and they're just saying enough already. And so their spirits are kind of downtrodden. They have to get to work and really clean up the muck and the mire of those areas. How do you keep them enthused to go in and do everything they need to get out of those areas, to get them cleaned up?
Well, it's truly been a historic year. If you look at the Gulf of Mexico, the American territory within the Gulf of Mexico, I believe over 95% has been affected by major hurricanes this year. But the folks at FEMA, who are so professional, and Brock Long has done an amazing job at FEMA, they know that whether it's a Hurricane 1 or a Hurricane 5, they are ready to go. The NRCC, which is the National Response Coordinating Center, that is up and running and has been up and running, I believe, since late August. And they're just going to allocate another storm into this center and task it and mission tasks to the appropriate agencies, and the relief will come. And they're just such great professionals at FEMA that America should be very proud of the work they're doing right now.
And many Americans are very proud of them, including the President of the United States, who has actually talked about them extensively and thanking them for the work that they've done. Thomas Panuzio, we thank you for the work that you've done as a member of FEMA as well, because it is not an easy task when people are losing everything because of a storm, and you go in the middle of that natural disaster and actually help them get their feet back on the ground. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly. Have a wonderful night.
You too.